and Atkinson in rugby league. John Atkinson was the flyer in the Leeds Rugby League team that used to sweep all before them. He was the classic winger who won just about every honour the game had to offer. 26 Great Britain caps. He played in 5 cup finals. Alan Smith was on the opposite wing at Headingley. He's still there 22 years after making his debut. Smith was out of a different mould to Atkinson, powerful, uncompromising. He didn't know the meaning of the word defeat. They've gone their separate ways. Atkinson coaches rugby at Carlisle. He's a detective. Smith remains at Headingley and he's an accountant, but they'll always be remembered as a partnership.
Well, I'm sure for both Alan and John, this room holds many, many memories. And when you look around at all these photographs in particular, it must spark the memory going. And Alan, it could have been very different for you, couldn't it, really? Because you almost didn't end up here.
Yes, I signed for Leeds in '62, John. There were some great names at Leeds then. They won the championship final in '61. Yes, I came to Leeds all at once '62 and made a bit of a shaky start, a young, inexperienced player. I can remember the team. I can go through the whole lot 1 to 13 that Wednesday night.
Never played in a sense. There was so much at stake. They were both tremendous teams. I mean, you know, they were a tremendous. I mean, they talk about this present Australian team that's just gone on. They were, you know, Langlands
That's right.
and people and Billy Smith and people like this, all tremendous playing, household names really.
Artie Beetson was playing.
Artie Beetson, yeah, you know, and it was a tremendous, absolutely tremendous match to play in. It's a tremendous ground to play on, it's Sydney Cricket Ground. You get a bit disorientated because with it being circular, you subconsciously line up with stands on a normal pitch. You know where you are by where the stand is. You have this difficulty at Sydney Cricket Ground because you're never quite sure. But it was a tremendous match to play with, you know, great players.
We started the tour up in Darwin, worked down the East Coast, and the reputation had built up and snowballed all the way down. Took a bad knock with the first test that was the only match we got beat. And then we picked up the slack again, you might say, and started to sort of snowballed again. We were beating teams, country teams. And it was the all-important one, and like I said, camping out the night before, the pressure. If one was nerves or tense, then I think that was it. But in that hotel, that Olympic hotel, it was just opposite the ground. There was, I found that strange, that you could actually just walk out of your hotel and walk to the ground, and that's where you're playing the third test on Sydney Cricket Ground, as opposed to all meeting on a coach and having a social event before you go on a conditioning. But we were all ready for it, and the match, like I said, was one hell of a match.
The third and final test at the Sydney Cricket Ground brought to a climax the most successful British tour of all time. After their triumph in squaring the series, the British management, hardly surprisingly, decided to leave well alone. The only change saw Mick Shoebottom of Leeds taking over from Castleford's Derek Edwards at full back. And although the final score, 21-17 in Britain's favour, may appear close, it hardly gave a true reflection of their superiority. The Australians were restricted to just 1 try, while our boys crossed their line no fewer than 5 times. John Atkinson led the way with 2 of the tries. His Leeds colleague Sid Hines, partnered on the other wing by Alan Smith, got 1, and the other try scorers were Hulkingston Rovers' brilliant standoff half Roger Millward, the star of the tour, and Castleford's giant prop forward Dennis Hartley. Millward put the seal on a famous victory with 3 goals, and even the most hard-bitten, pommy-bashing Australian supporter had to admit the better team won on the day. The British team was given a standing ovation, but sadly, that was to prove the last time we won a Test series down under.
John, coming out of that 1970 tour, I mean, we'd been the winners, and yet it seemed to me that the Australians, after that, learnt more than we did.
I think they certainly did. I can remember an article by, I think it was Cole Pearce, who had refereed us in the Test matches, saying that the Australians were decades behind our style, you know, after coming back that tour. And I think they buckled down then and started to learn. And we came back home and thought we'd done everything. We'd gone over there, we'd won the Ashes, we'd had a record-breaking tour. And they built from there on. They went to America, they learned new training techniques, professionalised the game an awful lot more. And we sat back on our laurels, and we're paying the price for it now. You know, we're trying very hard to catch back up, but it's us that are light years behind, and I think it'll be an awful long time before we do catch them up again. They talk about climates and facilities, but you know, we're brought up over here. You know, you live in it and you get used to training in it. It's just they have professionalised the game you know, far more than we have.
Yes, I mean, Alan, you played against the last Australian touring team. I know that was quite an impression for you, quite an experience.
It was, yeah.
Why do you think it is we've fallen so far behind them?
The Australian attitude for one. I mean, they've always played the game, basic football. It's backing up, it's tackling. They start off by, if they tackle so well and the other team cannot score, then they cannot lose. And basically that's a sort of foundation for their success. And they do tackle, believe me. I mean, 71 were out there, that's the time I was there. That's the first thing I noticed was the tackling, when they hit you. They really came and knocked you in two. And it hasn't changed. They've just speeded it up, they tackle so well, they back up and they're supporting one another. Getting on to why are they succeeding now and why are we behind? Theirs is, it really is down in New South Wales. It is like full-time professional. It is such, the financial carrot, I call it, is such that, of course, it increases the competition to get into first-grade football, to get into one of those big league clubs and have a lucrative contract. So all the thing is geared to wanting to play professional rugby league in Australia.
And do you not think that our lads have that same desire nowadays?
Over the years, well, since 70, I think we have slipped back insofar as ours has become a little bit more of a social game, I call it. We're trapped in this part-time professional thing where we've all, the bread and butter of every rugby league player, of course, is his everyday job. He's got to have the everyday job. So, of course, going out 3 and 4 times a week at night to train in what are bad conditions for a modest reward, really, to me, I think that's where the difference is. And we have slipped behind, and like John says, we've a few years to go now before we, if we can, get it back.
Yeah.
But we've still some years to go.
So do you think that this game might one day be dead?
No. I think it might not exist as it exists now, but I don't think it'll be dead. But I think, you know, we're trying to get the senior players, the first team players interested in training and things. We ought to be starting with the Colts, and they ought to start so that when they come through, you know, that they do it naturally, that they've done nothing else. Unfortunately, a lot of younger players come under the influence of older players, and the older players keep the younger players down to their level, and that's wrong. It's the younger players who should be bringing the old. If you can't keep with the young ones, then you shouldn't be in the game.
You both have actually retired at some stage. Now, why on earth did you come back, having already got out of the game?
Stupidity, I think. But I think you get... you're brought up, I don't know, this place was a magnet, you know, it was a magnet, really, to us. I mean, I struggled when I retired. I mean, there's a lot of people say it was over a particular match, but I retired because I found that when I was working at that time in the police in uniform, it was difficult to put the same standard of training that I'd always been used to, and I was coming to matches at times when I wasn't prepared to play, when I shouldn't have been playing, where a footballer, a manager of a football team wouldn't have allowed his players to play in that sort of state. And I was struggling along, and fortunately things developed different for me in the police, and it gave me that, you know, allowed me to go back to the sort of type of training I'd done before.
Al, as John just said, this place Headingley has magnetised him. It certainly has you, but hasn't it cost you in many ways in your private life as well?
It's a difficult situation to be in, because any... I've said earlier, moderation is the key, but if you're determined and you want to succeed, then you don't seem to moderate. You just blinkers on. You are geared to succeeding, and by the wayside falls at times family life and even your kids. You've got to make a conscious effort to make sure that they don't get pushed into the background.
I just sometimes question maybe whether there were other things that we may have done, you know, that we didn't, you know, because of commitment and dedication you put into the club and to rugby at times. And I'm sure other sportsmen and other people in other walks of lives often, when they get to an end of a career, sometimes look back and think that there should have been other things he could have done that he never did. I don't regret 1 ounce of anything I've ever done at Leeds. I mean, it's been a tremendous part of my life. But as I've got older, I just wondered if there were maybe another type of sport that I could have played and should have tried, rather than putting everything I had into rugby league, you know. And
You see, you could have been an athlete or a boxer, couldn't you? I mean, or a gymnast. I mean, you were good at all of those things.
I didn't most at that time. I think the one regret I have is that because you were a rugby league player, you couldn't have been an athlete.
The rugby league has never been a rich game, has it? Do you think that, Alan, is now reflected in the standards?
Yes, really. Yeah, we talked a bit about the Australian financial carrot I mentioned, yeah, and basically, yes, that's that sort of trap that we're in. It's where clubs are struggling. Attendances, I mean, they are businesses when all's said and done. People coming through the turnstiles are paying the money for the survival of the club to pay the players the wages. And there's very little modest reward. It's sad, really, because somewhere along the line the thread is lost as to why it's a sport, it's an enjoyment, and I've always tried to... My philosophical approach has been that I enjoy... The fact that I get paid is always a bonus, and you know, like I said, the thread does get lost where people get tangled up in the earnings league. Yeah. But that's the modern society we live in. It's the modern reward for success, of course, is money.
And yet people don't really want to pay to go through the turnstiles as they used to do. You look at second division games now, don't you? And there's 300 and 400 going.
They're not seeing very good football, John. That's the sad thing about it, really. I mean, how possibly you might say yourself that if you're not going to see a good game of cricket, good game of golf or snooker or rugby, you're really not going to pay £1.50, £2, stand on the terrace because if the standards got to be good. You want to see good football, good rugby league.
Yeah. John, I mean, how bad is the standard now, honestly?
The standard's certainly dropped. There's no doubt about it. I think everybody would, if they're honest, would admit that the standard's certainly dropped. There are probably one or two factors. Some people say the fact that they've split 2 divisions now stop, you know, the young players who play in the second division from the opportunities to playing against the better players in the first division, and so in that respect the overall standard would be higher. By keeping the second division as it has for so long, the standard just drops with it. People don't have to play well because they don't play against a good player. You know, I don't know whether it's gone too far now, whether that bringing it back to 1 division would be the answer, but they come out with all sorts of different ideas, and it's just not working.
But it's difficult to see a future for the Heightons and the Bramleys and the Doncasters and the Rochdales, isn't it?
Well, I think, to be honest, it is difficult to see a future, simply because of the economic situation that we live in nowadays. It is making it much more difficult for them. But, I mean, the people at Heighton and people like that would say, well, look, we're surviving, we're doing OK, we're still going along. But I just wonder how long it can go on, you know. The expansion, I mean, some people are all for the expansion. Now, obviously, I've been down to Kent, and the facilities down there are absolutely first class. You know, but the sad fact is that you get a lot of the clubs within the second division are grumbling because they have to go so far down to Kent to play, and it's costing them an awful lot of money. And although the expansion's a good thing, it's killing some clubs by having to go that far down.
Yeah,
and,
obviously.
You know,
so I think
it all becomes round. You can't afford the players to pay the players. The players don't come, so the standard drops. You know, it's.
Yeah. I think one of the tragedies is here you've played 1,000 games between you, you've got some great memories of the game, and you, John, in particular, have played in 17 cup finals. I don't think many of the modern-day players are going to be able to equal that. But let's go back to your first final, 1968, Wakefield Trinity. That's going to go down as one of the all-time great finals in many ways.
The 68 final will always be remembered for its farcical conditions and its fantastic finish. Torrential rain left pools of surface water on the pitch, and tackles were achieved amid huge sprays which made for dramatic pictures, if not fluent football. When Atkinson scored Leeds' only try of the game to go with 4 goals from the boot of Bev Risman, it seemed the cup was on its way to Headingley. But in the dying seconds, Wakefield's winger Hurst won the race for a controversial touchdown. The score, 11-10 to Leeds. Everything depended on the kick, right under the sticks. It didn't seem possible for Don Fox to miss, but he did. The ball sliced wide off his skidding boot. Fox, poor chap, fell to his knees in despair. A moment that was to torture him for the rest of his life.
Well, for different reasons, they'll always show that final. I hate to mention it, I'm sorry that I'm having to mention it, but Don Fox gets picked out every time for this, and everybody forgets, because of that final, what a good player Don Fox was. In fact, what a good game he'd had that match. And because of the conditions, the water and everything, everybody picks that particular final out. For me, it was, you know, a dream come true. I was 21, I was playing at Wembley. I'd first gone to Wembley to watch Leeds play Barrow in 1957, so, you know, it was tremendous. But by Sunday, after the match was over, it was an anticlimax because of the conditions. Had spoiled, actually, what should have been an absolutely brilliant day.
You scored a farcical try, haven't you, for us?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I'll not admit that it was either a try or not a try, really, because, to be honest, I don't know. I cannot remember to this day whether, you know, I would have scored or not scored. Everybody in Wakefield are probably saying, well, there's no chance now, he would never have scored, and I just don't know. I had to wait virtually, I think, to the St Helens, the last St Helens final, before I really felt the satisfaction of playing in a tremendous final at Wembley, and I'd played in 4 previous to that one, but, you know...
Alan, I mean, did Wembley live up to expectations for you whenever you played there?
We all talk about this. It goes so quick. It seemed a little bit like a dream afterwards. It's gone so quick. But I think it's because you build it up, you've seen it for so long as a youngster, and you watch it and you see that carpet, the grass has been mowed in different patterns, and it looks far, far bigger than what it is. But when I first walked into the stadium, I was surprised that really it's only grass. And, there are 2 posts, really, you know, and things like this. And to actually go out there was certainly a wonderful experience.
Right. Now, Alan, I mean, just how would you describe John Atkinson as a winger, his qualities?
Mutual Lamination Society, this, Bob. No. John, for me, quite without hesitation, has been the best winger of the modern game. He scores tries when you need them, and John's always got them when we've needed them. And he's the type of player who will bring the crowd on his feet.
Well, I think that was a fair testimony, John. Of course, the great right winger people talked about here was Eric Harris, the Toowoomba ghost, but I think Alan Smith has just about lived up to that.
Oh, I'm sure. People often used to say to me over these, who's the best winger you ever played against? I said I was fortunate. I never played against him because he used to play on the other wing to me. And for some known reason, I think that there was a vein that they used to think he was defensively minded. You know, Alan could tackle, but I have stood in amazement at how he's ended up scoring tries from impossible positions when it's been tight. And he's had not only backs around him but forwards around him who have been trying to push him off that over that little white line and never been able to do it.
Well, I think he's got 350-odd tries. John, you've scored 400 tries. I mean, how do you hope to be remembered? Do you John Atkinson or Smith and Atkinson?
Oh, together, I think. I hope people will, you know, remember us both as a partnership. I think we've given enjoyment to not only Leeds supporters but rugby league supporters, and I'm happy about the things, because that's basically, as much as I enjoyed it, and I know Alan feels very much the same, we went out there primarily to make people enjoy watching us play, you know. And,
yeah, that's right. It's a nice feeling at the end to think that you've given people satisfaction.